from Detroit, Michigan, USA. In My House, hosted by T. Carlita, where the true stories are told and great music is played. To another episode of the In My House Techno Music Show. I am your host, T. Carlita, and we are so excited. We are doing another one of our what we call virtual out the house experiences, and we're leaving Detroit and we're using Zoom to go over to the sunny side of the west side of the United States. And I'm just going to tell you, I am super. Can I say super even more? dot at the end. I am so grateful to introduce to the viewing audience, Suzanne Ciani. Let me tell you, this lady's resume is a resume that I want to be her when I grow up. And I'm excited that she's here, and I'm excited to let her share who she is. But I'm going to just tell y'all this. She is a pioneer of electronic music. And I'm going to let her say hello because I'm just sounding so excited. Suzanne, welcome to the show, first of all.
Hello. Thank you for inviting me. Shall I call you Tina?
Yes, you may call me Tina.
Okay.
That is fine with me.
Okay.
So let me tell you how I stumbled upon you. Now, mind you, I'm from Detroit, birthplace of techno. I'm familiar with electronic music and the whole 9 yards. I was watching Netflix. I was watching a Netflix series called This Is Pop or This Is Pop. And they did this, the auto-tunes one. It was the auto-tunes one. And all of a sudden there was this little lady with all these cords and wires. And they said she was pioneer of electronic music. I'm like, tell me more.
Right. Well, we're digging into the deep past because the fact is you can have a resume like this if you live as long as I've lived. So
you look good for it. They say you 72. I can't tell.
Actually, I'm 75. Woo! At this age, you don't lie anymore.
No, you don't. Look, I want to be like you when I turn 75. So I was watching this and I was fascinated. So I Googled you. Like, we all Google everybody. I'm like, whoa. So I want everybody to know when an artist has a form on their website, fill it out. They do respond because I did. And she responded. And that's why she's here today. So I asked a lot of the techno guys if they knew who you were. Yeah. So I'm like, okay, let me see if they know who she is. Some said, oh, I heard her name before. No, I never heard her. And then when they Googled you, they were like, whoa. So, let's start back. Let's backtrack.
Okay. You're in charge.
You are a pioneer of this business of electronic music, what we call the quadraphonic sound, correct?
Yeah. Do you like quadraphonic? I didn't know techno music was in quad, but yes, that's my domain. I love quad.
Well, we have a label here in Detroit. It's an international label, but it's based in Detroit called Soiree Records. Okay. And one of his artists called Rubber J, he did a song that was literally called Quadraphonic Sound.
Awesome.
And he did the song in quadraphonic sound. So I'll play that record on this show. So when you watch it and see the actual, you'll see what that song sound like. Okay.
Okay.
So what fascinated you with this quadraphonic sound? How did it all start? Because there's a machine that you use. I can't pronounce it. So I'm going to leave that to you. Just give us the beginning.
Okay. So in the beginning was in the 60s. Woo-hoo! And I was actually a classical music person at that point. But not fully. I was a composer. I thought of myself as a composer, and I was in school at UC Berkeley on the West Coast. And I hated my my professors, and I hated the whole thing. And I discovered Don Buchla. So Don Buchla was the inventor of the analog modular music instrument. He did that in 1963. I met him in 69. And by then his vision of the instrument had already grown quite a bit. It was something to behold. Well, I have one here that's a later version of it. But, people used to laugh at it. They would say, oh, it looks like a switchboard, a telephone switchboard. What is that? It's just a mess with wires. But to me, because I devoted myself to this instrument for about 10 years back then, to me, it was just an emancipation, kind of a revolution. It meant that I could make my music independently. And I didn't need, women were not exactly in the mainstream as composers.
Right.
There weren't any openings, really. The Hollywood people didn't want to hire you to write films. I did find an opening eventually that we can talk about. But so Don, from the very beginning, realized that electronic sound being, I'll use this word disembodied, but, it doesn't originate in a physical form, like a cello or a trumpet. When you play a trumpet, it's sitting in a place. Mm-hmm. The sound doesn't move around. Right. You don't expect it to move. But electronic sound was different. And you could move it, and it wanted to move. And his very early instruments had quadraphonic outputs, and you could voltage control the movement of the sound. Mm-hmm. So the same voltages that you used to shape the sound, whether it be, all the parameters, amplitude and timbre, frequency, you could also use to move the sound. Mm-hmm. So the beauty of this is that the movement was entirely integrated into the composition as it was being created. Mm-hmm. So today we have quadraphonic, and we have spatial, we have Atmos, we have, systems for playing back spatial sound. But a lot of the actual positioning of the sound is done post-production.
Mm-hmm. So in the early days, so the quadraphonic, so how did he, Don, arrive with calling it that? Because you were there. So how did you guys coin it as such? Because quad represents four.
Yes.
So phonic is the way you speak, like when you break the terms of the words down, like phonetics. So how did he coin this is quadraphonic sound? Do you know that story?
Well, if you think of stereophonic sound, it's 2-channel.
Right.
It wasn't a big leap to say, hey, I have 4 outputs now. My sound is in 4 channels. So it is quadraphonic. So that was just the natural way to name it. Mm-hmm. Even stereo, I'm old enough to remember when stereo, became widely adopted. Wow. So all these things are, progressive. And I think we're in a moment now hysterically.
Yeah, we're historically. Yeah, we all are pretty hysteric right now. Like, I can't believe that we're living the way we're living. So yeah, hysteria sounds right. But for historical purposes, let's use historical.
Right. So, historically, we're at a time where spatial sound is available. I mean, we have, I give credit to the home entertainment industry for really fostering, the infrastructure in the home to have quad. But anyway.
So when you and Don met, how'd you meet him? Did you bump into him at the coffee shop? Run into him at the subway? You guys are at a rave party? No, just kidding. Didn't have rave parties yet.
No, but we did have some very good drugs, I have to say.
Yeah, that was the 60s is Woodstock era, free love, free everything. I know. Yeah. I watched those documentaries too. So how did you guys meet, and how did you guys begin this transition of work relationship?
Okay, well, this is really, I would say, serendipitous, because I had a boyfriend at that time who went to UC Berkeley, who was a teaching assistant in the art department. His teacher was Harold Paris, who is a sculptor. Harold lived in a huge warehouse down on the water in Oakland.
Okay.
So it was one of those converted industrial spaces. You know, if you needed a lot of space, kind of like lofts became in Manhattan later.
Mhm.
But this was a huge place. And I went to visit Harold with Joseph, my then boyfriend. And he said, you gotta meet the guy next door. Next door? Yeah, let me see if I can get hold of him. Anyway, Harold took me over to meet Don Buchla. And Buchla was not exactly an extrovert.
Mhm.
He was maybe autistic as a child, I don't know. He was very odd. He didn't even like to talk, you know. He would kind of make noises, you know. Yeah, I don't know. He was a
Doing the
funny guy.
sounds.
But he was, you know, I went into his studio, and it was a big dark space with a swing, you know, that you could swing from the rafters. And it was filled with towers of modules that were blinking and lighted up. And I just, at that moment, felt that kind of sense of destiny. I mean, it's so intuitive. You don't even understand why you're doing something. But for me, you know, in retrospect, I saw it was the promise of everything for me, that I could become independent, that I didn't need, you know, orchestras. I didn't need the political structure of music. I just could do it all myself. So I said to Don, when I finished graduate school, I said, I'm coming to work for you. He had really odd people working for him. You know, it was a really eclectic bunch of kids. There were Sufi poets and Indian dancers and odd, you know, people that weren't really skilled in electronics. But what we did, we sat at a table, we looked at the schematics.
Okay.
And we assembled the boards. So you had to put parts in and solder. Now, okay, so after my first day, they found a cold soldering joint. And he looked at me and he said, you're fired.
Uh-oh.
I said, I'm fired. You can't fire me. Why are you firing me? He said, there was a cold soldering joint and it must be the new girl.
Oh, yeah, the new girl.
The new girl. So I just said, you can't fire me. And I showed up for work the next day.
Okay.
And I stayed. I had lots of little incidents with him. We didn't get along. You know, now later in life, we became very dear friends. And, you know, everything shifted because, you know, the beauty of time is that things change.
Yes. They
Nothing's, nothing's frozen in place.
So what, you know, during, I mean, technically in the music world or in any industry during that time, there was really no outlets for women. I watched another documentary and they were just saying that, you know, only thing they expect women to be were like teachers and secretaries or nurses. But to step into a man's world, such as music, like all of a sudden, music is a man's world and no women should be there. So, what were some of the challenges? Just kind of take us through those 60s, because that is such a pivotal moment in our history of where we are today and why we are, like you are Rosie the Riveter. You were like, hell no, you're not firing me. I'm back. You can't get rid of me. I'm sorry. I'm here to stay. And I like that. So take us through a little time capsule. What was it like for a woman such as yourself breaking into this man's industry?
Well, I was lucky because the thing that I fell in love with was an instrument that nobody had. these instruments we were making, even at Don's, were for institutions. They were very expensive, but love is such a powerful force. I was in love with this machine. It has kind of human responses in a way. It talks back to you. You have a relationship with it. It's a powerful relationship. That's what I'll call it. And so I went out into the world with this Buchla. And the other thing, the backstory of this is that the early instruments, a lot of them were not portable. They were studio instruments, but Don wanted his instrument to go out into the world the way any performance instrument could go.
Okay.
Yeah. So here I had this instrument. It was in a suitcase, and I started. Let's just start with I needed money.
Oh yeah, usually works. That's usually the foundation of all existence. Yeah. Okay.
Right. So it was through my friend Joseph. He was from Milwaukee, and he had a neighbor who was doing commercials, and he was doing a package of commercials for Macy's that Christmas. And I also had access to an electronic music studio. It was the first one in the country, called the San Francisco Tape Music Center. And it was housed at that time at Mills College, and you could go in for $5 an hour and, play with the machines. You weren't supposed to do commercial work. But as I said, I needed money, and I was given these scripts. I was given the job. I hid them in the drawer, underneath the Buchla that they had there. And I did these designs. I was instinctive at that. First of all, there were no instructions. There were not even any manuals. You were just kind of flying free in all of this. And that freedom allowed you to be an instinctive artist. You didn't have a model of how we would use it, how you would use it, or what you would do. So when I did the commercials, I found that I could make sounds that kind of represented the feelings or the ideas of that product. If they were selling a keychain, I'd make the sound of a keychain, with the Buchla. Or if it was a fur coat, I'd make the sound of a fur coat. What is the sound of a fur coat? Well, it's poetry.
Okay.
And when you're in an electronic world, there are no, it was new. There were no definitions. It was wide open, and you could go in there and create anything you wanted, really. Like the Coca-Cola sound, that happened pretty early.
Yeah, we're gonna take a quick break, and we are going to talk about some commercial works that you've done that I kind of like. I got my little bullet points of your most popular ones, and then I want you to tell me about some of your ones that we may not even know about, because like I said, you are so brand new to me, and you will be brand new to my audience. But because Detroit is the birthplace of techno music, and in some senses they all use quadraphonic in their way of producing and creating music as well. I'm almost sure of it. So let's take a quick break, and then let's talk about some of the commercial works. I am really fascinated to find out about the Coca-Cola project. So we're going to come right back. This is T. Carlita with Suzanne Ciani. Is that correct?
Ciani, right.
Ciani.
Very good.
Okay.
No, Ciani, right. Or Ciani. It's okay.
Italiano. Yeah.
Sono Italiano. Okay.
She is truly a pioneer of electronic music and has been doing this for as long as I've been born, because she said the 60s. I was born in the 60s, so we're not going to get that part. She got some history here, and I'm just excited to have her here with you. So let's take a quick break, and we're going to talk about the commercial work of Suzanne Ciani. You are In My House, hosted by T. Carlita, where the true stories are told and great music is played.
I'm Wayne County Treasurer Eric Sabri, encouraging all taxpayers to please take advantage of the several payment options available.
You can pay online by visiting the Wayne County Treasurer's Office website. Paying online is easy and convenient.
You can also download the mobile app and pay with your smartphone.
You can pay at one of 70 kiosks located throughout Wayne County.
And yes, you can always still send in your payments using the U.S. Postal Service.
If you have to visit our office in person, you must make an appointment by going to treasurer.waynecounty.com. It only takes a few minutes. Facial covering or mask is required and social distancing is observed. Your health and safety is very important to us. You can also email our office at taxinfo@waynecounty.com or call us at 313-224-5990.
In My House Radio, online 24/7. Featuring only the best techno and house music. And be sure to tune in for Sunday Inspiration, every Sunday from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Get connected, www.inmyhouse65.com.
So we are back with Suzanne Ciani.
Suzanne, really, but that's okay.
Suzanne,
Susan's
okay.
fine. If you're my good friend, you can call me Susie.
Okay, well, we'll get there. I'm not there yet. This
Okay.
is our first meeting. So
Okay.
next time I'll call you that. But right now, I just feel comfortable with calling you Suzanne. So we are back with Suzanne, and she is truly the pioneer of electronic music in its rarest, rawest form. She just gave us a little back history about how she connected with Don Buchla. I finally said it right. Do you know how many times I've been practicing that? And she is one of the originators of a lot of different quadraphonic sounds that are heard all over the place. And for those of you that just watch TV or play video games even, you have heard her sound. You may not know her name, but you have heard some things that she's done. So now I'm gonna take my followers back to the 80s. Okay. We're gonna go back to the 80s right quick. So when I was a kid, and a lot of my friends, we had this video game that our mothers bought us that we were super fascinated by, and it was called Atari.
It's gonna be a hummer, 'cause nobody's hotter than Atari this summer. Nobody's hotter than Atari this summer.
This summer, the really hot video games come from Atari. We've got Centipede, Ms. Pac-Man, Vanguard, and Galaxian. If you thought it was going to be just another summer.
Ah, awesome.
So did you guys know, this is a little factoid, you're meeting a lady right now that did some of those Atari sounds. So Suzanne, tell me about the Atari experience.
Well, in those days when I was in Manhattan and I started a music house because everybody wanted, this new sound, the techno thing, and nobody really knew how to use it. So I started my own, music house where you could come and I could do the whole thing. A lot of our clients were, high tech clients.
Okay.
So in those days, they were just starting to put chips into products. So it was either game products or washing machines or refrigerators or whatever. And the chips, they wanted to advertise that was a high tech, angle on this product. And so Atari was a perfect match for us. And I did a ton of commercials for Atari. That's what was it like? I mean, it was fun. I mean, for me, everything was fun back then, because you just kind of were in a playground, a play field of nobody could hurt you, bother you, or get in the way because they didn't know what you were doing. And I didn't actually, they came to us with the games were already done, and then I would recreate the sounds when I was doing a commercial. Okay. So, have you seen some of those?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, they're in my there was a documentary done. Have you seen that one?
Yes. Yep. I watched.
Life in
Listen, I
Waves.
watched
Yeah,
all of that.
okay.
I watched it all.
Okay. Did you see Sisters with Transistors?
No, I gotta. Okay, that's on my to-do list. Sisters. Hey guys, y'all heard what she said. Sisters. I'm writing it down. Sisters
Okay.
with
Sisters
transistors.
with Transistors. Yeah.
Y'all get on that.
Right.
You heard it here first.
Right. Because you mentioned Rosie the Riveter, and I thought, oh, she's right on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but anyway, so that, well, we don't need to talk about that.
Yeah.
So what were we
now
talking about?
The pinball machine. That's another one.
Xenon.
So the pinball machine, so Atari, the pinball machine, Xenon, and the Coca-Cola, and those were all part of productions from your production house, basically. Did they stem from that?
Yes, they do. But although the production house wasn't there right away, because when I first started, I was hired as a session musician. So I would take my Buchla, and people would, they attributed some magic, to this instrument. Everybody wanted to use me. So I would show up at sessions, all kinds of sessions, jazz sessions, disco sessions, but whatever, you never knew. And then, as I said, my real bread and butter was advertising. And I actually have a story that's very Detroit oriented.
Okay.
So in the 70s, the late 70s, the largest or next to largest worldwide advertising agency, McCann Erickson, had a director, and he said, we want to incorporate the really cool music and artists from the real world into our ads. And they hired Billy Davis from Detroit.
Wow.
A Black producer who had been in the early days of Motown.
Right.
He wrote, now I remember, Lonely Teardrops, and Reet Petite.
Okay.
And he was just, he worked with Barry Gordy. He never got a lot of credit for, his work there. But anyway, he took a leap. And he went to Manhattan and became the music director of the largest agency. And he brought in all the Motown singers. Oh gosh, I don't remember names that well, but everybody who was singing in Motown would come and do Coca-Cola.
Wow.
And Miller Beer and all these big accounts. And he really revolutionized the approach, because before that, music for commercials was really pretty limited. It was like jingles. Right. It was ditties.
Okay.
So he made a huge shift in the industry. Mm-hmm. And he was the one, believe it or not, I showed up at a session. Well, I mean, this is even a longer story, but I was trying to get an appointment with him because I was new, in New York, and I was hungry, and I had a list of the top 20 agencies, and I had a calendar, and I would, pound on the door. I would call them, and they'd say, call back in 2 weeks, et cetera. And this one agency, McCann Erickson, with Billy Davis, I finally got an appointment. And I went to it, and he didn't show up. So then I got another appointment somehow, and he didn't show up. Then I got really mad. I got a third appointment, and I said, "Where is he?" And they said, "He's at the studio." It was in Times Square. Anyway, ran over to the studio. They said, "You can't go in. He's in session." I said, "He has an appointment with me." And I opened the door and went in. And there was this, very cool Black producer who like couldn't believe that somebody had come into his control room. And he was kind of impressed that I'd, marched in.
Right, exactly.
And he said, and we got to the point, he said, "Well, what do you do?" I said, "I make sounds." And, they were working on, I didn't turn this off.
Of course, you would have a quadraphonic ringtone, right? Right. Okay, go ahead.
So they were doing a Coca-Cola commercial. There was a little space in it. They wanted a sound in there. He said, "Can you put something in there?" I said, "Yes." I always said yes. That's the key to like anything, right?
Yep.
Just say yes. So I said yes. He said, "Well, what do you need?" I said, "I need my Buchla." And he said, "Well, go and get it." So I went and got it. And I did that Coke Pop and Pour. There's another long story in that. But anyway.
Coca-Cola Pop and Pour.
Wow.
That was a Detroit story. I don't know if you care about the root system of Detroit, has had such power in so many directions.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
No, that's what this show is really all about. It's electronic music, techno and house, but it's really electronic music on all levels. But I'm a documentary film person. So when I do this show every week, it's like my documentary producing itself every week. So the history is really good. And one thing about the guys and the producers and the DJs, they really love the history of the music. That's why I was so glad that you agreed to be here with me today, because I know that there's going to be something that I may not understand, but the artists and the producers that are watching this, they're going to know exactly what you're talking about, because that's what they do for a living. They make sound. That's what techno is all about. It's about making sound. Detroit you got it? Okay, good.
Got it.
All
Okay.
right, we'll get to that one. So,
okay.
Detroit Techno it evolved, and it has its own, life. And just like Detroit, the Motown sound, the Motown sound is Detroit Techno in its own way. Detroit Techno is Detroit Techno. What you do, the quadraphonic sound, it is what I really like. I think I might have to take up that Buchla, but I don't know. That's a lot of wires for me. How do you keep them organized? Jeez, OP.
I know. Sometimes I get a little lost myself, but yeah. Okay.
So when you're working on a project with your Buchla back there, so let's just say you're in a session and you're creating something and you have this wire plugged here, this wire plugged here, this wire plugged here. And then you get this little brain fart where you can't think and you just walk away from the machine and you come right back. Do you just pick up where you left off, or have you just like yanked everything out and started all over again?
Well, now I'm doing mostly live performance, right?
Okay.
So I can concentrate on one patch.
Oh.
And I can explore that patch. And yes, every time I do a concert, I have to repatch 100 cables. This is true. But once you get to know the machine, it's so logical that, you're thinking like, oh, this is a brain. This is what I want it to do. This is what I have to do to get it to do that. So, it's so logical. If I want this key to control that, then I patch that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it's complicated. For me, it's like riding a bicycle.
Okay.
Because when I was young, I did that, I lived with this machine. It was always on.
Okay. Oh, I did hear that in that documentary. You said you never turned it off because the sound and a lot of your inspiration comes from the ocean waves.
Yes, that's another thing. That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
when you
that's
turn,
right.
like if you turn it off, then I guess it's like discharging the heartbeat almost. It's like, you know,
It's getting it off life support.
yeah, right.
That's
Right. So are you familiar
So-
with the artist Alexander Robotnik? He's Italian and he uses this plug thing. He does, I don't know if it's quadraphonic, but I know it's analog and it looks
Yeah.
similar to what you have, but he has this humongous thing. And all of his works come from using something similar. I have to ask him if that's what he used in the beginning. I'm not for sure.
Well, now there's a lot of stuff out there now in this modular world. It's called Eurorack, and there are thousands of modules, and kids everywhere, assembling their instruments by collecting these modules. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So we're gonna take another quick break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about Detroit Techno, believe it or not, guys. She does have a techno story. She is quadraphonic, very spacious, very electronic, very cool, but she does have a techno story that she's going to share with us, okay? So this is Tina and Suzanne, and we will be right back. I am super excited to have the pioneer, over 30 plus years, quadraphonic sound originator, doing her thing. So we will be right back with some techno talk. You are In My House, hosted by T. Carlita, where the true stories are told and great music is played.
I'm Wayne County Treasurer Eric Sabri, encouraging all taxpayers to please take advantage of the several payment options available. If you have to visit our office in person, you must make an appointment by going to treasurer.waynecounty.com. It only takes a few minutes. Facial covering or mask is required and social distancing is observed. You can also email our office at taxinfo@waynecounty.com or call us at 313-224-5990.
In My House Radio, online 24/7. Featuring only the best techno and house music. And be sure to tune in for Sunday Inspiration, every Sunday from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Get connected, www.inmyhouse65.com.
So, okay, guys, we had a great time in the green room talking and just catching up on things so we could bring this next segment and our final segment to you the proper way. So, throughout Suzanne's travels, she has gone through many different facets of music. And I just still trying to see this little lady carrying this machine in a suitcase in Manhattan. That had to be an adventure because Manhattan moves fast. So you had to get out the way with that thing. You got a pretty strong arm there, lady. So let's talk about techno. So when did you first discover techno?
Well, I don't know what you even call techno, but you know, because electronic music has just been around for a long time. You know, the first time it took over was, you know, disco had a very strong electronic element, but that wasn't exactly, you know, techno. I think techno had to wait until the music technology equipment became more available. You know, you had to have the machines. I had an early machine. I had one of the first machines, but eventually machines started coming in from every place, you know, from Japan and England and Germany. And now, you know, it's a huge phenomenon. So that, I don't know, when do you say that techno started?
So
when?
According to Detroit history, so Detroit history is Detroit is the birthplace of Detroit techno, or techno as it is. So there's a young man. His name is Juan Atkins, and there's a documentary out that talks about the birth of techno. And the birth of techno basically came from him coining the phrase, calling it techno, which is all technology. So he said techno. For sure.
Right. What year was that?
Early 80s.
Oh, okay.
70s, 80s, late 70s, early 80s. And so the techno factor, see, Detroit, there, like you said, there's electronic music all around us. Because like a lot of people, you know, you think of craft. When you think of electronic music in the dance world, you think of Kraftwerk, you know, Kraftwerk Berlin, and then you think of Detroit. But the thing with Detroit techno, it has a grit, it has a base, it has a bottom, because a lot of techno music just, it's hollow, it's tinny, it's, you know, it doesn't have a soul. It doesn't have a soul.
Right.
And what Detroit techno gave it, in my thought, it gave it a soul. Because, you know, during the time when techno evolved, through Juan, Kevin, Eddie, you know, the Belleville Three, Eddie folks from the originators, you know, we were going through some stuff in the city. You know, crack had invaded our communities and the guys didn't have jobs. So are we going to sling dope on the street, or are we going to do this? So a lot of households had instruments. You know, you take a can of whatever, a bucket of this, pot tops, and you make something, right? And here we are now, well known all over the world for the invention of techno music. And you have to, and it's just crazy. So we were talking, and she met, now I haven't met him, but I'm super excited that you have. So tell us about you got a Drexciya story. What's your Drexciya connection?
Well, you know, in my touring, I would, you know, share, you know, performances with a lot of techno performers, and they started to all blur together. Nothing really stood out. And then one night in Italy at Terraforma, it was a summer festival, I hear a performance by a person who's got a mask on. I don't even know who he is, but it just stopped me in my tracks. I said, oh my God, there really is a difference. You can make, you know, qualitative, you know, to me, it was all a blur. It all sounded the same. And now I heard something that really connected to me. And that was, you know, at that night, I think he was being called, what was he being called? Drexciya or ARPANET maybe. I mean, this is Gerald Donald.
Okay.
And he has many names.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, and he had a mask on. So I didn't even know what he looked like, you know, but we were staying in the same hotel. And that night after the performances, I ran into him in the lobby. And he was with his wife, and we kind of stayed up all night talking. And he was just fascinating. So that was a ships passing in the night. I don't think I ever spoke to him. I've never spoken with him since, but it just, for me, it made a lasting impression, his performance. So that's all that story is.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us. Now, I got to ask you one last question. So,
okay.
One of my favorite TV shows. So we went through the pinball machine. We went through the Atari. We went through the pinball machine, Z9. Now, before we do this, though, that Z9 was totally 70s, though. When I looked at that commercial and when I heard it, I'm like, that is so 70s. It was like trippy because pinball machines, they were like mutant sounds, sort of like, to me. Is that where that came? Where did the word Z9, who started that anyway?
Okay, well, Xenon was a pinball machine, and that came out of the Midwest. Now, it wasn't Detroit. Where was it? Was it Detroit?
But was it based on during
Valley Pinball Company?
Okay.
It was based on, as I said, I just designed the sound for it. It was based on the chip they had I was the first female voice in a pinball game because we had a new chip that you could record a tiny little bit of information. But a lot of the voices were done with a harmonizer and a vocoder, so that, I could distort and change my voice. So it had low range, medium and high range, whatever. And I designed the sound to be sexy and to be responsive. So as you played it, the sound came back at you as a response.
And the vocoder is still a very popular instrument that they're using in a lot of electronic music, even to this day.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I worked with the inventor of the vocoder, Gerald Bode.
What?
Bode. Yes.
So wait a minute now. How'd you do that? You get with all the inventors. How'd you find him?
I was there at the right time and in the right place. I mean, he was at Bell Laboratories. They were just across the way from where I lived in Manhattan. And of course, I knew all these people because we had the Audio Engineering Society. So it was a convention. When I first joined the Audio Engineering Society, I got an incredulous, letter saying, "Are you sure you want to be in the audio engineering?" There were no women in it.
Right.
And so they said, this must be a mistake, and I said, no, I want to be in the.
Applying for that school teacher's job, right?
Right.
All right.
And I look like a school teacher. What can I say? I never adopted extreme appearance. I just always wanted to be myself. And that to me was the most radical thing that I could do.
Okay.
Instead of,
You didn't punk rock your hair? No.
No, I didn't. I know all about it because I lived, in that period. But what were we saying?
Vocoder. That's amazing.
Oh, the vocoder. Yeah. So Gerald Bode, what a lovely man. And we actually we invented something together, and he died before we could make it, but I might still do that if I get around to it. Yeah, but all these things were, I have to say, it was to be there in that. What had just happened was that the transistor was invented, and that revolutionized a lot of what you could do. I mean, before that, you had to make electronic instruments with tubes.
Okay.
And a synthesizer could fill, 5 rooms and generate a ton of heat. So, technology is kind of hand in hand with the technical possibilities of just the raw materials. Mm-hmm. So now we're in a very exciting era too. I mean, I'll be gone before they develop it all, but we're working in, as you noticed, quadraphonic, spatial. We have spatial imagery now. We have touch plates and light control of things. So, what my instrument is very much, knobs and dials and patch chords.
Okay.
And I love it. But,
so what advice as a revolutionary, bust the door down type of woman you are,
right?
what would you say, what advice would you give to someone who's watching this, that may be a young lady, especially because, you know, we women have to empower each other? What would you say to someone who just not for sure themselves, or just kind of like here, maybe how you were when you were young? What would you say to them?
Well, I think we are in a time of women empowering other women. Thank God we finally got to this critical mass where we could make a difference with each other, because in the old days, women were competing with each other because they were trying to get into a man's world. And now we know that it's not a man's world. It is, in fact, a woman's world, but it's not even a woman's world. It's whatever world you want it to be. But especially in electronics, it gives you such independence and control. You can do it all yourself. All you need to do is to do it. You develop a relationship. I think women are so suited to the sensitivity that's required to just listen to these machines and be with them and spend the time. And you know, it is collaborative. You know, there's what I always learned from the beginning was that there's the inside of the machine and the outside of the machine. So if you want to be on the world of the inside of the machine, get a degree in electrical engineering and, you know, learn how to make circuits and do all that. For me, I've always concentrated on the outside of the machine. I have no fear. Fear is a big deterrent in warming up. You know, if you have a relationship and you're afraid of that person you're having a relationship with, it's just not going to work. You know, so I have never had fear. It doesn't mean that I know more than anybody else. It means that I'm open to, you know, hearing that thing. You know, if I have a technical problem in my house, I don't call somebody and have, you know, or whatever. I just say, hey, you know, what would I do? Let's think about this. What, you know, where does this cable have to go? Maybe it's, you know, you can, it's so logical. It's truly friendly. The machines are, you know, when they behave as machines, it's so comforting because they're you can figure them out. I mean, digital is not necessarily as figure outable.
Okay.
But analog certainly is. But digital, again, I say, you know, if I deal with my computer, you know, if you call Apple now and you're a woman, excuse me, they think that you just don't know how to turn it on. You know, that's
that is so true. By the way, did you power your system on? Yeah, that's how I'm talking to you, because it's powered on. That's terrible. You know, we women have a long way to still go, but we have made strides thanks to you.
Thank you. And thanks to you, Tina, because, you know, you're very at home in this world. Look at you there in your studio with everything.
Definitely. I'm excited. And I have my little digital. I still do my vinyl. I have converted to doing stuff. I'm vinyl girl, 2 turntables and a mixer. That's enough for me.
All right.
I leave the rest to whoever wants to do that electronic thumb drive and everything else. I leave that up to them. But Susan, I'm so grateful to have you here. And I want to also thank you for creating the soundtrack of my life. Once upon a time, One Life to Live kept me going at a very pivotal moment in my life. So thank you for creating that One Life to Live soundtrack. I hated when it went off the air. I watched it all the way to the last day. So you are a dynamo. You are a dynamo, and beautiful as you can be. And I'm just fascinated by the discoveries of the sound waves that you have created over the years that have really been soundtracks for our lives. So guess what, guys? Now we know who created those sounds for us. You know, there she is, right there. So you're traveling now. So is your Buchla smaller and easier to travel with now?
Yes, it is. Good. It's big, you know, because it has somewhat of a digital component, you know, so the sequencer, instead of being this big, is only this big. But yeah, I mean, I'm booked for concerts now in Paris, etc. for October, but I don't think we really know what's going on with this.
We sure don't. And it's
No.
we're really going backwards right now.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I hope we're like some countries are back on shutdown again. So
yeah,
it's something. We just have to like pray, meditate, and let the universe sort itself out. But we as people, we got to take the initiative. They've got the vaccines. If you don't want to get vaccine, wear your mask at least, But anyway, that's a whole nother dialogue that we're going to get into.
Exactly. Okay, Tina.
So one last question for you. So when you get booked for gigs, what arena is it in, or what industry, musical field are you booked as? A classical, or are you booked as an electronic? What do they genre put you in?
Well, now, I have toured as a pianist, but that's in the past. Right now I'm touring as a Buchla live performance. That's my commitment, is to kind of show how we used to perform on this analog modular instrument. Okay. I did this, 50 years ago. And and it's live quadraphonic. So they have to put up the speakers. So I'm not classical by any means. I'm live I'm electronic. I'm not dance music, but I do get put into a lot of contexts where there is dance music, because people, electronic music now is one big kind of package thing. But I'm not doing beats,
Okay.
I'm not doing dance music. I love dance music, but that's not my thing. My thing is, live electronic analog modular. And it's something that I kind of, did many years ago. And I'm fostering the idea that these instruments are not just studio instruments, that you can go out and perform on them, that they are instruments in the tradition of musical instruments that are performable.
Right. Well, I hope one day you make it to Detroit, because if you do, I will not be front row. I will be on the stage with you. I will be your muse. Just show me where to plug it in. I want to be right there. I want hands-on experience.
All right. Okay.
So hopefully things will weather out well, and we can get some more travel dates. And I hope there will be an opening for you to come to Detroit, because I swear I want to see this in person. All right. Well, you take care. Thank you so much again. And until next time, this is Tina. Again, you have witnessed history in the making today. There's not too often that you get to meet, virtually, of course, a pioneer of someone who has been the soundtrack of all of our lives. And now we just put the pulse to the sound and the thing all together. Again, Susan, thank you. Wish you well, and hopefully you get to come to Detroit.
Thank you. I love Detroit.
Take care. All right.
Bye, Tina. Take care.
Okay. You are In My House, hosted by T. Carlito, where the true stories are told and great music is played.